because it's about willingness, right? I think for Nathan, you were willing to put yourself in that situation. You were willing to be uncomfortable. You were willing to be seen. You were willing to not understand. And I think that is what's happening in obstetrics. There's not a willingness to look at it a different way, to look at it through another lens. And if you look at what the definition is, it's the quality or state of being prepared to do something, a readiness.
This was a hard one. I am blessed to have a lot of really, really great people in my life who have helped to guide me through language and their own direct lived experience as to how to be a better doctor, a better birth worker, a better man, a better father, a better brother, a better friend. And the two women who I invited on my podcast for this episode are Sevonna Brown and Haize, and they fit that those qualifications beautifully. Haize and Sevonna are both Black birth workers. Savonna's a doula. Haize would probably most appropriately describe herself as a traditional birth keeper, although she is in training to become like a, quote, real midwife. She has more skills than most midwives will probably ever dream of having. And that is a really important part of our conversation. As advocates, as politically activistic, advocates or the individuals who are going to change the world, change maternity care. I think we have to really pause once in a while when we consider, what do we value here? Do we value a person's lived experience, or do we value a piece of paper on the wall? And of course, I've got a lot of papers on the wall, but I can't even get close to amounting to the collective lived experience of Haize and Sevonna alone, not to mention their many people that they interact with on a regular basis and through their various advocacy programs, et cetera. Haize has two programs, the Bridge Midwives. We'll link all of these in the podcast description. She also has a program called the Victoria Project, and Sevonna Brown is the national director of Restore Forward, which is really a Black women's advocacy group. It is nationally based and naturally a part of sort of decolonizing the way that Black women have been treated since the foundation of this nation, this great nation, is going to help assuage the various limitations to access to care and access to compassionate, sort of human-centered interaction within the medical system, which is why Sevonna naturally is also a birth advocate. She's also a doula. But I went to South Africa with my co-conspirator in all of my programs, Sarah Rosser, who is a midwife. She and I were the only two white people of a group of otherwise Black birth workers and advocates that went to South Africa in October of 2023 with Sevonna, guided by Sevonna. And then, of course, we met our host there, Matshila Motse, who's going to be a keynote speaker at the Born Free Twins Breach Conference. She will be doing a virtual presentation because logistically it was not possible for her, as it turns out, to come to the United States. But when we sat with her and called in our ancestors and whatnot, this is something that was very uncomfortable for us white folk. We've been hiding behind credentials and education and privilege for so long. And this is not like the white guy saying, oh, woe is me for being white. This is me saying, I don't think I could have ever been emotionally prepared for how disruptive the experience in South Africa was for me as an individual, let alone how I can now express myself and feel, safe enough to be vulnerable enough with the feelings that I've been suppressing over so many years. And it's not a matter of right or wrong. It's just let it flow out and just see what magic sort of results from you just being willing to sit in your discomfort. And this trip was very uncomfortable, but fortunately, Sevonna made me feel very, very safe. And over time, I became very, very good friends with a lot of the women on the trip, although I bet they were a little bit skeptical of a tattooed white boy who used to wear a white coat coming into this sacred space. And then, of course, Haize is a member of the Born Free community. She is a collaborator with a variety of different birth workers out in California, namely Bliss Young, Goddess Bliss of the Birthing Instincts podcast. That's an amazing podcast that is really a great companion listen to this one, where they really get into the realities of what midwifery practice and obstetric practice look like, into some of the policies and some of the disruptions in patient-centered autonomous care. Both for the birthing family, autonomy for the birthing family, as well as for the birth worker. So anyways, Haize and I have gotten to know each other to a degree where I was like, you know, Haize, I think you in Sevonna should moderate the Born Free Twins Breach Conference, because you guys have experienced the horizontal violence in birth work based on credentials, based on the color of your skin, based on whatever. But you've also lived this experience as Black women. And so we dive into some of these very, very complicated issues. But it really comes back to, what is our role as a birth worker? It's this beautiful intersection between birth and death and rites of passage and ancestral lineages and trauma and all this stuff. How do we package that into an hour-long conversation? Well, we do our very best in this very wide-ranging conversation. So you're going to love this one. Of course, in order to keep the lights on here, I have to be very express some deep gratitude for two companies that help to keep the lights on here. And that is my preferred prenatal vitamin, which is WeNatal. Amazing nutrition. They're very eco-conscious. They're very oriented towards the body-mind connection. I just love everything about WeNatal. I've worked with a lot of prenatal vitamin companies, some of the best. This company is so great because they have 3 products, a his and her prenatal, and then they have a fish oil. And if you go to wenatal.com/beloved, purchase any of their prenatal vitamins and add their fish oil to the cart. And voila, the fish oil is going to be free to you at no charge. If it doesn't work with wenatal.com/beloved automatically, just enter code beloved at checkout and you'll get that fish oil for free. This is the vitamin that I'm recommending to all of my clients. We ship them out at no charge to our Born Free community members. If you want to know more about Born Free Method, just go to bornfreemethod.com. You'll see just how complete this pregnancy, preconception really through postpartum program is. The other company that is supporting the podcast is Immune Intel AHCC. I have a vested interest in this product because I think a lot of supplements are just bullshit in the bottle. But AHCC, active hexose correlated compound, is a whole food supplement made from the mycelia of shiitake mushrooms, and it has been demonstrated in vivo in a number of trials to help women clear HPV. Now, HPV is not the problem. HPV is reflecting some upstream issue with the immune system. And when you take AHCC, Immune Intel AHCC, you're going to get an increase in the NK cells, the T cells, the interconnectivity of your immune cells. It's going to decrease systemic inflammation. It's going to get your immune system remodulated to do its job, which is wound healing, fighting off infections, and clearing precancerous cells, all of which are relevant to your path. If you've got persistent HPV, if you have an abnormal PAP, if you're facing a LEAP or maybe a hysterectomy because of something abnormal on your routine cervical cancer screening, this supplement has worked wonders for so many women now that I was like, guys, whatever you need from me, I am so grateful that you're a sponsor of the podcast, because your product is so useful for so many women's health issues. I haven't even mentioned the myriad of other things, but you can learn everything you need to know about AHCC at themedicine.com, THEMEDICIN.com. Use code beloved10 if you want to score a bottle for 10% off. I suggest taking 2 to 3 bottles every year. And if you're actively working on your HPV or cervical dysplasia right now, grab a couple bottles and take 2 to 4 capsules twice a day. You can't even go high enough for this to become toxic. They've fed rats, rodents, their body weight in this stuff, and they haven't seen any toxicities form. So it can only do good. I take a bottle every 3 to 4 months just to get my immune system kind of recalibrated as the seasons are changing here in Kentucky. I think you're going to love this product, and I'm so grateful that WeNatal and Immune Intel AHCC are supporting the podcast, because this is an expensive passion project. It's a passion project. I'm not making income from this, but it is nice to offset some of the production costs. I've got a great team in Jeff Mendelson and his team at Agents of Pod who make this show possible. So shout out to Jeff. This is how we pay Jeff and his team. All right, without further ado, Sevonna Brown, Haize Hawk, two of my dear friends. I can't wait to see them in August at the Born Free Twins Breach Conference. If you're interested, at the time of this recording, there are probably still a few spots left. If you're not able to make the trip out to Kentucky, there's a live stream option. But if you're there in person, you're going to be enjoying amazing meals, an amazing setting at the Omni Hotel, the biggest, most beautiful hotel in downtown Louisville. We're bringing in vocalists, we're bringing in ecstatic dance, we're bringing in breathwork, in addition to innumerable incredible conversations and a wide range of speakers that are mostly midwives this year. We still have our core duo of Stu Fishbein and David Haize, our PhD, and Rick Safries. We've got our JD and Hermine Hayes-Klein. We have an MD, OB anesthesiologist, Tracy Vogel, and then a whole cadre of midwives from around the world that you're not going to want to miss. Go to bornfreetwinsbreach.com if you want to come and meet my guests today, Sevonna and Haize, in person. And of course, yours truly, I'll be there. And we can hug and hold hands and connect like people used to connect before this like remote digital age became our primary means of communication. Enjoy my conversation today with Sevonna Brown, the National Director of Restore Forward, and Haize Hawk, traditional birth keeper, who's also the co-founder of the Victoria Project and the Bridge Midwives with Bliss Young. All right, so I'm here recording with Sevonna Brown, who's the National Director of Restore Forward. We'll hear about that and some of our work together in the past, which has led us to collaborating on this amazing conference that's coming up in August. And I'm here with Haize Hawk, who's not only a member of my Born Free community, but she is a traditional midwife in Southern California and is the co-founder of a variety of projects, namely the Victoria Project and Bridge Midwives, which is a collaborative effort with a mutual friend of ours, Bliss Young, I believe. And so we're going to, the really unique thing about Sevonna and Haize is that they are going to be the MCs, or what we're calling the Weavers of Resonance, for the upcoming 2024 Born Free Twins Breach Conference. And for the reasons that we're going to discuss today, I thought they were the perfect people to tap because, frankly, guys, not only are you better looking than me, you guys intimidate the hell out of me. And that's a good reason to have you at the sort of the face of this conference that I'm putting together for birth workers of all sorts. So why don't we start? Let's start there. Sevonna, you and I went to South Africa together, and that was a whirlwind of a trip. Tell me a little bit about what prompted you to start that program, and why on earth did you invite a little white boy like me to come along with you and a bunch of powerful Black women to learn how to sit with tradition in villages outside of Johannesburg?
Wow, Nathan, thank you so much. I love you dearly. Let me just say that.
Thank goodness. Geez, oh man.
Very grateful to be here and to be in this conversation. And, you know, what everyone should know is that we spent almost 45 minutes just like talking deeply about the intersections of life, birth, death, ceremony before we even began today. So it just feels requisite to acknowledge our ancestors who are, you know, collectively and respectively holding and grounding our crowns in this work. So really grateful to be here. I wanted to also bring some important historical information, which is what binds us three together is actually Ricky Lake and Abby Epstein.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Three of us are connected due to the legacy and work of the business of being born and their subsequent documentary, The Business of Birth Control, and all of the amazing film babies that they've birthed. And I think that that's how we three know each other, and how we've been in rooms and been able to sit alongside each other and be in lockstep with each other. So in November, yes, Black Women's Blueprint, which launched Restore Forward, took 10 midwives, birth workers, doulas, OBGYNs on a journey to South Africa with our partners, Africa Ikalafe, who are rooted and grounded in Indigenous midwifery study, research, and practice in Johannesburg and the provinces that are connected to Johannesburg. And there was this question really around how it is that Indigenous elder midwives in South Africa are accomplishing maternal vitality in ways that we are not able to accomplish in the United States. And so it felt really important that these two Black populations, one in South Africa and one in the United States, come together to engage in what we hope to be a learning exchange, but really just ended up being a learning of
for real.
learning from the Indigenous elder midwives in South Africa. So I want to say and call up the name of Machilo Motsei, who is the founder and lead midwife at Africa Ikalafe, who invited Black Women's Blueprint and Restore Forward to invite our siblings from the United States to come and join and sit at their feet. So Nathan and I got the opportunity to do that. And, you know, Nathan and Sarah Rother from Born Free Method were the only two white folks who joined us on this trip, on this journey. But I felt that that was so important and so critical while we're working so hard to turn the ship around in terms of maternal mortality and morbidity in the United States, and really think about how we as a collective fabric hold a responsibility and an accountability to Black women, and how our liberation is bind it together. So we had a phone call and I was like, you have to be there. You have to come. You have to also help create more abolitionists, you know, of the white obstetric community in the United States. So it felt really, really critical. And Sarah also as a model for what it looks like to be an intersectional holistic midwifery. It also really made great sense for me that Sarah would be with us. Haize, you are coming with us next time. We are not.
Yes, I was so upset. Oh, girl, you don't know. First time I was like.
Yeah, you were holding down community for us, and also life was happening for you. You know, I know that there were several transitions in your world as well. And I won't take up too much more space answering this question, Nathan, but really, really grateful and excited about just the conversation that we'll have today, and honored to be co-convening and co-facilitating the twins' breech birth ceremony in August with the three.
Sorry, we have a little visitor here.
No need to apologize.
Music box turned off. Do you want to say hi? Come over here. Over here. This is a live recording, and Penny, you're making your debut. This is Penelope.
Oh, hi,
I'll be right in.
Hi, Penelope.
Say hi, Miss Sevonna.
Hi, Miss Sevonna.
Hi, Miss Haize.
Hi, Miss Haize.
Hi, sweetheart.
I'm having a hard day with me.
Oh,
something happened to her ear?
She has an earache, so we put some garlic oil in.
Yeah.
I'll be down.
Sorry, sweetness.
Yeah, garlic oil will probably help you.
yeah, it'll help
You
you.
want a little more?
Yeah, and some garlic honey. That's right. Yeah. Why don't you go back to your room? I'll be
A
down.
little massage. You can massage your neck behind your ear.
I'll put your podcast back on, baby. Okay. All right. I love you.
My podcast on.
I love you, baby. I love you, honey. Do you want to?
She's so precious. Oh my God.
Oh my
Does
gosh.
she need to sit in? Does she just need some comfort?
She's so articulate. Like the full expression of what's happening for her.
Yeah.
It's like, listen,
Yeah.
this is where I am. Hi.
Very, very advanced little 4-year-old.
Does she need to just sit on your lap for this conversation? What is she
Yeah,
doing?
that's fine.
Do you want to sit on my lap? Come here. Do you want to sit with me? Okay. Let's try to have a little conversation with our friends. Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Show them how
All right.
you're using your coping skills.
Yeah.
Right? You're
Yeah.
using your coping skills. So you're going to be with us. And even though you're not feeling great,
I'm going to think that has a rainbow fish.
You have a tank with a rainbow fish. You do. That's right. You do. You do. So
He has blue scales.
you're so cute.
Yes.
blue scales. Yeah, she has blue scales.
Blue
Okay.
scale.
I'm going to ask a couple questions. Do you want to hear how they respond? Okay. So Sevonna, I don't know how we left off there, but
Oh yeah,
maybe
I was just giving a lot of words. So I think that it would be
Amazing.
beautiful to hear from Haize. I was giving a lot of words about how we met and how we connected and my excitement for the conference in the fall.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about indigenous midwifery in South Africa, and the meaningfulness of you being present with us there.
Yeah.
So
And I was expressing my dismay.
Yeah,
I was not there.
So I'd totally be happy to pass the drum to my beautiful sister Haize, and just hear from her and allow her to call her lineage into the space, and also her relationship and connection to you, and before we proceed, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Haize, you're up.
Hi. Thank you so very much. I'm loving that we're finally in the same space together, which has already been so powerful. Just in our first 45 minutes, we were just went off on all these tangents. Yeah, just riffing. Gosh, Nathan, I'm not sure. Was I stalking you? I'm not sure how we connected.
I don't know. I mean, I guess we probably know a lot of the same people, and you were like, hey, what's this Born Free thing? And then you and I got on the call. I was in Mexico, I remember, and I saw your face and your hair, and I was like, who the hell is this lady? Like, and I started stalking you, and I was like, God, I want to be close to her. I want to get to know what she does, because, and maybe we can use this, Haize, as a means of introducing yourself. You use a very charged term nowadays, which is a traditional midwife. And I think a lot of people are kind of confused by that term, because you bring a lot of tradition, truly tradition, into your practice, versus what I learned to bring into birth was largely through the intellectualization and academization of this space. So maybe you can share a little bit about your, how did you get into birthwork? Yeah, like talk about some of your initiatory rites and these rites of passage that you've gone through that brought you to this space.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. First of all, I will say that the term traditional midwife was placed upon me because of life circumstances. As I was doing my midwifery student journey, I had so many losses, so many people in my family that transitioned along the way or became really ill. And I kept stopping my training to take care of family, to support family. And in doing so, it took me forever to finish. So I came in studying and training with the likes of Kim Durden, Debbie Allen, Beth Cannon. And, so I literally was training with them and never finished getting it. My father passed last year, which was another one of the reasons why I did not join you guys in South Africa, although I was devastated to not be there with you. Not last year before, he was declining, excuse me. And that was important. And so that took precedence. The losses in my family, the family illnesses, my sister having cancer and then having heart transplant needed because of the chemo, it just was a succession of things. And also I had young babies and families, and, so it was just a whole thing. But I believe it was Bliss and Alex Evangelidi and Salama who said to me, you're already a birth worker. If you didn't have this law that was passed in California, you would be catching babies. And that's the truth. We have here, I have to be licensed here to be a licensed midwife, and that means to work here. So they call me a traditional midwife. And Bliss said to me yesterday, she said, your skill level is higher than mine. Your skill level, because you've been doing this so long, you already know how to do it. So if you go to Texas, you can be fine in practice, right? So that's how that happened, that they labeled me with that term, traditional midwife, although I call myself a birth worker. And I call myself a birth worker because I'm bringing in so many different aspects and tools and ritual and ceremony, because I am the ritual maven. I love it. I believe in it. And I bring all of that to the birth space. And what that looks like depends on what's happening with my families. And I became a birth worker. Literally, I did a hard pivot. I was in the entertainment world. I was an actress. Theater was my life. I was a dancer since I was 3 years old, and that was my world. And then I got pregnant with my son, chose to have a midwife, the only one in my community, chose a licensed midwife to have my son. And then after that experience, because of the woman who supported the midwife, she was a doula and a student midwife, I did a hard pivot. I was like, I want to do that. And started being licensed or certified in everything that she was doing. And by the time my son weaned at 3 years old, I started. And that was literally my introduction. And I've been immersed in the world of it. Now, because of the losses that I experienced, that's what took me into becoming a death doula, understanding what that is. And when I started it, there was no course, there was no certification, there was none of that. I just did a deep dive into the rituals that I experienced in different countries, traveling around, studying traditional midwifery, and the understanding of what grief was and loss was in all these different paradigms of what grief work is. And that's how I started my own journey. So literally, my container was built just through the experience of my life.
I mean, if that's not a calling, I don't know what is. Whether you like it or not, I mean, even a lot of people listening, whether you like it or not, you're a birth worker. Because if we want to change the world and we can't even get birthright, I feel like we'll find ourselves in this perpetual pickle. Man, birth and death is a topic that I think we could go deep on. But why don't we, before we do that, Haize, let's also talk about some of the discomfort. And Sevonna, I'm going to have you chime in on this as well. But some of the discomfort that you experience as a birth worker in the space right now. And I think that if we're not a little bit uncomfortable once in a while, it doesn't reflect that we're actually present with birth, because the families that are coming to us for care, that are going through this rite of passage, which is childbirth, it's very uncomfortable. Like, it doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't necessarily have to be orgasmic. It's going to be uncomfortable, because any real change is going to be a little bit uncomfortable. And so let's have a little conversation around this, because this conference that we're organizing, that you guys are helping me organize, is going to be a little bit confronting for people. You know, we have a very multidisciplinary approach to this sacred art of birth keeping, that if we do this correctly, it should draw in not only the OBGYNs and the midwives and the doulas and the birth workers, but it should draw out of us the conscious experience of being human, which nowadays is very, very frightening, to be able to feel everything. So for people that maybe are considering going into birth work or coming to this conference, what do you have to say about the role of discomfort in crafting our journey, you know, through this rite of passage with families?
Well, you know, I will say, and I think I mentioned this earlier when we were having our discussion, for me as a birth worker and as a trainer of birth workers, I think it's really important that we do our work and our inner work before we can even ask our families or partners to do their work. Amen. So we have to be okay with being in discomfort. We have to be okay with being stretched and expanding. And, you know, anytime we're expanding, it's uncomfortable. Like, we're stepping outside of our comfort zones. And I think that it's important that we do this as a gift to ourselves on a continual basis. Like, every year I'm going to drop into something that makes me uncomfortable. Like, I just want to keep growing that way. And I just feel like it's important that we as birth workers and holders of the birth space and, you know, facilitators of helping our families, you know, arrive and land in their birth ceremony in a conscious way, that we embrace the discomfort and we embrace the things that challenge us, and that we take it as a learning opportunity. And this space is very interesting for me. And I want to say that because in my baby student midwife years, back in 2011, 2012, 13, any of those times, I remember attending conferences where there would be a sprinkling of people of color. And for me, that is like the norm, right? That was the norm. I was used to being the only one in the space.
To being outnumbered.
To being outnumbered, outflanked, outthought, all of it. And it was very uncomfortable, but I was willing to be uncomfortable because I wanted information. I wanted to learn. I wanted to ask questions. So, and when it started to grow and more people of color started to attend, then it became uncomfortable for the majority in that space. And that was very interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah. And they would stand up and walk out of the conference. Oh, we never did that. We never did that. We were willing to be uncomfortable. So there's that conversation, I think, that's really necessary about what are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to embrace to arrive in a space of equality in the birth room? I have walked into peer reviews, and I will speak on this when we talk about why the Bridge Midwives is doing what we're doing now. We're doing this community peer review, and the it's to like have a safe space where there's no judgment. I remember walking into peer review here in Los Angeles, California, and they would stop talking when I walked in and just look at me, not acknowledge me, not receive me. Oh, welcome, come in. None of that. Just stare at me and then continue their conversation without acknowledging me, and then just kind of looking over at me as the conversation's continuing. And I was invited there by my preceptors. I left after 20 minutes. It was so awful. And I never returned. To that point, I never returned. It was the one that I had here. I would do subset ones which felt safe for me, which felt like I would be treated with respect and equal as a student, knowing that I'm a student in this space. So, there's that part. Let me not step over lines. But wow. So I think that it's really, really necessary for the growth of us as, facilitators of the birth ceremony, that we are okay with doing our own individual work, so that when life happens in that space, we're able to meet it and we're able to be there and recognize it,
Yeah. Sevonna, thank you. I don't think I could have said that better myself, which is exactly why I not only really have an adoration for you, like I mean that from the heart, but also there was a reason for which I asked you to sort of facilitate this gathering, because I don't think I'm just going to be a white guy for a second. I don't think us white guys are all that accustomed to being uncomfortable. But Sevonna, I'm going to bring you up next and put you on the spot. When I went to South Africa, I have never been that uncomfortable in my life. And fortunately, I was entrusted by not only Sevonna, but the other participants, as well as Matshilo Motse, our guide during the trip, who's also going to be a keynote speaker at this conference. I was invited in and entrusted with that discomfort. Like, we think you can hold that space. We think that you can be uncomfortable. So we're going to invite you in. But if I wasn't able to be uncomfortable, I don't know, Sevonna, maybe it wouldn't actually have worked out the way that it did. So how can we welcome people in knowing they're going to be uncomfortable? How can we do that responsibly in the space itself in order to make sure that people are feeling safe in their lack of maybe environmental safety as they would normally describe it? Hey guys, it's Nathan. Wanted to interrupt this amazing conversation very briefly to talk to you, specifically if you're a birth worker. This goes for doulas, childbirth educators, midwives of all sorts, whether you're out of hospital or in hospital, and especially the OBGYNs, the family medicine docs, those of you who are attending to births. I want you to ask yourself, if a person rolls into your practice and they're in labor and there's a bud emerging from the vagina, what are you going to do? What I was taught to do was, let's rush you to the operating room. Forget about informed consent. We have to do this through the abdomen. We have to do a C-section because the baby is breech. But frankly, I think a lot of women, rightfully so, want to avoid C-section, unnecessarily, of course. And so, if you were to just rely on your, let's say, your OBGYN residency training, you're not going to have the skills to attend to a breech birth. The good news is most breech babies come out without any intervention at all. But in the rare chance that they have a nuchal arm or a hyperextended neck or whatever, you want to have those skills, and it requires practice on practice on practice to get those skills, which is why I started hosting an annual conference here in Louisville. And in 2024, we're going to be leveling up this entire program. This is the 2024 Born Free Twins Breech Conference, where you're going to be able to get plenty of simulator experience with very, very well-trained educators and instructors. You're going to hear from a variety of midwives and some doctors. This year, we're featuring the Spinning Babies team, Breech Without Borders team. Stu Fishbine's going to be there. Christine Laria is coming with the Breech Without Borders team. She was a recent addition. Caro Gauchi from the Pacific Northwest is coming. We're also bringing 2 keynote speakers, Machilo Motse, who's a newly crowned PhD from South Africa, as well as Doña Angelina Martinez Miranda from Cuernavaca, Mexico is coming. These are instructors that have quite a bit, a breadth of knowledge and experience in order to help round out your own education. I haven't even mentioned Tracy Vogel, who's an OB anesthesiologist. She's going to be coming in to talk about trauma-informed care. Hermine Hayes-Klein is coming to speak to informed consent. There is so much that we're offering here. And I've only gotten to the didactics part. There's going to be plenty of time to practice on very realistic mannequins. And there are going to be some other activities for you to do some healing and as a means of community building. So we're going to do some trauma release work, a musical odyssey with Rebecca Kelly G. There's going to be some ecstatic dance in the mornings if you're open to that. It can be very, very releasing because we suppressed so much of this stuff throughout our lives that if we can't use our voice and our bodies in an expressive way, it's going to become a second chakra issue. It's going to impact our reproductive organs and our overall health. We're going to be screening Aftershock and having a panel discussion with Shawnee Benton Gibson and Omari Maynard, both of whom were featured in the film because Omari's wife, who is also Shawnee's daughter, she died as the result of what I would call medical negligence due to the color of her skin in the medical system. And that's what Aftershock, the film, is all about. We're going to do a breathwork shop with Sarah Tremoli of Effigy Breath. There is just so much healthy food, healthy community, healthy conversation in a very, very safe space. No breakout sessions. You're all going to be in the same room together in a very intimate setting, which I think is very, very important for this work. If you're interested in coming, go to bornfreetwinsbreech.com. Register as early as you can because the price will gradually increase as we get closer and closer to the event. There are a few opportunities available for work exchange for students or people who are otherwise unable to attend for financial reasons, but everything will be on site at the Omni Hotel in downtown Louisville, a beautiful hotel with some very, very beautiful meals and beautiful spaces that we're all going to be sharing together. I hope to see you in Louisville. The dates are August 8th through the 11th with an opportunity to do either NRP certification or a simulator intensive workshop with one of our instructors on the 12th if you want to stick around. And for those who stick around, maybe there'll be some other goodies along the way. bornfreetwinsbreech.com. I hope to see you in Louisville.
Thank you for answering just so beautifully and so compassionately. And also from your own personal space of where discomfort also has led you to the space that you are in your expertise and your wisdom and in the seat that you hold with community. I spend a lot of time thinking about this because I am someone who wants to facilitate watching people grow and transform. And that is much like the birthing process. It holds such beautiful qualities, but it also has this messy unraveling that is involved in it. And one of the things that I'm constantly challenging myself with as a facilitator and as a birth worker and as someone who it is meant and designed to hold the safeguards, or maybe called to hold the safeguards for someone as they are emerging in a process of growth or discomfort, is what is that person's autonomy and consent around this discomfort, around this growth, around this transformation, around this becoming.
Yeah.
Out of a journey, out of a workshop, out of a conference, out of a ceremony, out of a convening that we're inviting them to. And I think about all of the varying modalities. It could be acupuncture, it could be ayahuasca, it could be anything. How do we actually create invitations for people where we also meet them where they are inside of the uncertainties and the discomforts, the fear, right, that they have, rational or not, right? Adults joining a new experience, adults joining into a raw, ripe space of becoming and unraveling is actually an extremely vulnerable space. So I'm constantly asking the question of like, how do we actually create this invitation of discomfort without violating that person's like consent or full enthusiastic yes around like, yeah, I do want to try this. I do want to be inside of this new experience so that I can get to the other side. So what I will say is that I spend a lot of time meditating on that, how to do that, how to be with that person's spirit and their lived experiences. I really think about it from a trauma-informed space. I really think about it from a space of, okay, what are the stories? How has this person's life been storied? And is it possible for them to arrive at this shore? Is it possible to arrive at this mountain? Yeah. Is it possible? And rather than, well, if you would only just be uncomfortable, you'll be better on the other side. To me, that can be a violation of their humanity and their wholeness. And so I think about that a lot when I think about my white colleagues, when I think about my male counterparts, when I think about anyone who is not like me, right? Which is a lot of people. We're all unique and we all come to our human experience differentiated. So I hold that with a lot of compassion and great responsibility. And of course, I'm human. So there are times where I'm frustrated when people are like, I just don't get it and I just can't do it. And I feel the rage that I feel is not with them, but with whatever societal storying or experiences have brought them into that space where it's unbearable to tolerate discomfort. And that is not often, it's none of our fault that is where like we're at that kind of edge, right? So I believe that with just like anything else, learning, discerning, moving into uncharted territory requires those safeguards. It requires those invitations. It requires that pre-work. It requires that like that primal discernment as well. If someone's like cautioning, it's coming from a place that we need to hold sacred. So it to me, it's really a dance. It's a dance. And I so appreciated you being like, okay, well, I'm being thrown into this challenge, which is like, come along this journey, and I think often when it can feel like an honor or a once in a lifetime opportunity, or where other people who don't have to trust you are compassionately trusting you, it kind of feels like, well, I better get my shit together and I better figure out how to sit in this discomfort. Sometimes that can drive us into the space that we need to be in, but that's not the case for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So I'm extremely mindful of the fact that while discomfort has a role to play for us, especially in birth, when I think about OBGYNs who are like, well, this is how it's always been done, and all of these kind of aspects that are, to be completely honest, are habits of white supremacy, right? That if we look at, there's a scholar, her name is Peggy McIntosh, and she talks about unpacking this invisible knapsack of habits of white supremacy, which include a sense of urgency, the worship of the written word, worship of time, and all of these different kinds of things. Obstetrics is built on that. However, it's really challenging to bring people who are carrying around that backpack and who are really holding it so sacredly to unpack that, unravel that, and let that go. So to say, come into this space that you don't know, trust someone with a different credential than you. Trust someone with a different lineage than you. Trust someone with it because obstetrics is a lineage. Let's be clear.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So in all of these ways, I believe that we are asking people to be uncomfortable with their unknown or what they haven't yet storied or what they're not inside of a story around. And that we have to hold with compassion, and we have to hold from, to me, a trauma-informed, culturally sensitive lens. So when we think about the three of us are projecting to this space of the twins breech birth ceremonies that we're holding in Louisville in August, we're really thinking about the ways that people are walking in with their stories, their legacies, their lineages, their lived experiences, their eyewitnessing or bear witnessing of these circumstances, and asking them, inviting them to like come to this new shore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And knowing that we're all arriving at different times, and we're docking at different stations, and we're holding different baggage, and we're unpacking different backpacks all at once. It is our job, and it is our duty and our responsibility, because we've said yes, to do that sacredly and responsibly. And I'm sitting in meditation around what does that actually look like constantly.
Yeah.
I would never say that I have it all planned out, right? We can scenario plan about how people might arrive with the things that they're going to arrive with, but we really have to be in a deep meditation around how do we meet the person, where the water meets the sand. That to me feels important.
Yeah.
I love that you said that. I love that you said that, because it's about willingness, right? Willingness. I think for Nathan, you were willing to put yourself in that situation. You were willing to be uncomfortable. You were willing to be seen. You were willing to not understand. You were willing to, it's the willingness. And I think that is what's happening in obstetrics. There's not a willingness to look at it a different way, to look at it through another lens. And if you look at what the definition is, it's the quality or state of being prepared to do something, a readiness. And I think that along with what you're saying, Sevonna, absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, I got my hands full here. I have a toddler on my lap, or a 4-year-old, not even a toddler anymore. And we've got our sponsor things, and I've got your marquees. We're doing it here. I am so deeply, like, I almost feel like what we're talking about right now is actually the answer to many of the things that we are suffering from the most in our daily lives, but especially in this incredible rite of passage, which is birth, that many of us have felt a calling towards this privilege of being in this sacred space. So I thank you both for for giving me new language. That's one of the greatest, I think, outcomes of being friends with people like you, is that I don't even have to understand it. I have to feel it. It's not an analytical comprehension. It's what am I feeling right now? And sitting with that, even if it's uncomfortable, even if I feel a little confronted and maybe even angry and pissed off, that's okay. That's actually a part of the process. That's a part of what we're all here to do. And if you think you've learned it all, if you think you've felt it all, if you think that you're good at you're like cool with death, you haven't been with enough death. Because a lot of people think as a person, Penny, baby, please, as a person who has sat with so much death, even in the perinatal space, people think that I'm like this cavalier, like it's all nihilistic, it doesn't matter anyways. No, I'm actually even more thoughtful and sometimes a little bit even more cautious around death, because I realize this is really important stuff. And the more that you allow yourself to just simmer a little bit and have somebody to hold your hand whenever it gets scary, that's where real growth comes from. And that's where humility comes from. And that's where our appreciation for, as Sevonna mentioned, our individual stories that we're bringing into this space. That's really, I think, how you're able to integrate this and move forward together as a unified, through a unified front. Haize, while I have you sort of front and center here, I wanted to ask you, you've done quite a bit of initiation of your own. And I want to ask you maybe to reflect a little bit on the importance of rites of passage and ceremony in how we show up for ourselves, for our family, for our clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think through my varied studies, my varied interests, I realized that ritual and ceremony really they empower us, and it helps us to really acknowledge the things that are important to us, and they help us define who we are. Yes, ritual and ceremonies can be a milestone marker, but beyond that, it's actually a deepening of the understanding of where you and your energetics, your frequency align with life. Because ritual is something that is highlighting an aspect of your life that has meaning. And so to bring ritual into the birth space, or ritual to life, one of the reasons why I'm called the ritual maven is because I will create a ritual around anything. I just love taking a moment to really deepen our daily experience. Even the ritual of making tea in the morning. Yep, I have a ritual, and that ritual grounds me into my day, sets me into my intention, and then I go, and I can be more powerful in the world. I can show up more available in the world because I've done my morning ritual of grounding with my tea, with my meditation, whatever I'm doing. So it ends up being where my whole life feels like a ceremony. My whole life feels like a meditation. And every now and then I step out of it.
Yeah.
But basically, that's my day.
Yeah. We just got an espresso machine, and part of it is my wife is like, why do we need another device on the counter? And for me, it's listen, I can make a pot of coffee and just drink coffee all day and get my caffeine buzz or whatever. But now every time I want to get a cup of coffee, I have to measure out the beans, and I have to aerate the beans, and I have to grind the beans, and then I have to, run the water through it, and I have to sit there and just be patient and present with every step of the process. And then that little tiny cup of coffee, an espresso is like a couple mouthfuls. It tastes better because I actually just slowed down and I was present. For the first thing I did in the morning, maybe, is I just was present and grounded in my practice. Mm-hmm. And this sounds like a really okay, bro, you and your espresso. But for me, it was where can I put ritual into every aspect of my life? It can be in lovemaking. It can be in how I'm present with my little girls. It can be in even the cup of coffee. I also use a dry vaporizer for tobacco. That is a grounding ritualistic practice for me. It is not just the chemical hit. It's the chemical hit as a consequence of me putting myself at the center of this experience right at this moment for 5 minutes. It's something that we don't actually do a lot of in our daily life. And then we're expected to sit with birth, which requires presence. It's a ritual in and of itself, and we haven't been practicing it.
Yeah,
exactly. You're not all of a sudden going to show up being this intentional, grounded, amazing person in the birth space until you exercise those muscles.
I so appreciate this conversation because there's so much involved. There's so much involved in what, Haize, you mentioned around us doing our own work as birth workers. And people are like, well, what does that mean? Right? Because I think that, yes, I think we should be accessing therapeutic spaces, right? And we can think about decolonizing therapy, and we can think about how we, find respite in unpacking our experiences. That's really what it's meant to do. Mm-hmm. There's also this embodiment of presencing and grounding that you and Nathan are talking about. And it's really a factory reset. It's factory resetting that is calling us back to our humanity in ways that we have been, I think I can speak grossly about society, and especially American society, North American society and Western culture. We have been desensitized, we have been disconnected, we have been microwaving our lived experiences and our love lives, our romantic lives, our ways of being, our interactions with our children. And that factory resetting of getting into the analog ways, getting into the sitting and patiently waiting, getting in the bearing witness and fully presencing ourselves. I'll say that is when I find the most discomfort because, again, I haven't been practicing it, right? And I would wholeheartedly agree if we keep creating all of these bundles and all this technology and all this telemedicine and all of these different things and manufacturing birth, right? And cultivating these interventions. And then if we only become a utility and an intervention in birth as well, even as traditional birth workers and healers, because people have found ways to automate their work, and we lose the ritualizing, which we are all guilty of in many ways, then we will keep bumping up against these circumstances, these issues, these reviews, these mortalities, these monitoring and evaluations that say that, well, we're still in the same spot, if not worse than we were 5 years ago.
Mm.
So again, if we can actually decolonize birth work, if we can actually reground ourselves and to say, the way I make my coffee and the way I relate to my tobacco is the way that I'm regrounding myself right now. Like, then to me, it's not trivial. It's absolutely critical to the vibrations that we that descend upon the families that we support in our own communities.
Yeah. Yeah, like these terms like self-care and everything. I remember when I was in residency, like this is a bunch of doctors that have been incentivized to use their brains above their heart and to just get the job done and score high on the tests and all that. And they're going to like do a wellness day. And it's like, we're going to go do yoga. But it's like, we have to fit it into this 40-minute slot. We have to do it this way. You're going to do it for this reason. Like it's like so analytical, when really what you might need for your self-care, your wellness as a doctor, as a midwife or whatever, is to just slow the fuck down for 15 minutes in the morning and like put your hands on your heart and breathe in what you're hoping to get from the day and breathe out what you're holding on from the day before. I mean, it doesn't have to be some like special fancy technology or some multi-day retreat. I mean, that's awesome. If we could do South Africa every single, day, that would be amazing. But the reality is like, this is a part of the work, actually, going back to what Haize said. If you're not doing your work, then how can you show up for these families? How can you show up for one another? So it's no surprise that there's so much anger and resentment and just vitriol in the birthwork community, because nobody is doing the work and they know they're not doing the work. But the people that are not throwing shit at each other are the people that are like humble enough to realize that, oh, there's probably more that I could do, or there's some part of this experience that I have co-created for myself or for this family. And so ritual and ceremony, it's everything, isn't it?
It's everything. It's everything. It's everything. And my hope is that, in the work that Haize and I are doing for the conference, we can centralize it in a way where it's, I believe that in our culture of conferencing, which I know we are unconferencing and we are ceremonizing this space. So we are not expecting this to happen. But I did want to call out that in the culture of conferencing, something that can happen is that there's like this opening ceremony and a closing ceremony. There's a deep breath before lunch and a deep breath after lunch, right? And it which is ritual, right? It is ritual to have a standardized time and a standardized moment to engage in the practice of presencing and reverence. That is ritual. So I'm not crediting that. However, there's also a way where an organic flow or a bearing witness of all things is also ritual, right? So it's not to over ritualize a space, but to hold sacred the ways in which each movement, each transition, right? Each moment is really a possibility for one person or another to be engaging and sitting at the seat of ritual, right? And that I believe that our goal, the three of us and those who are arriving and coming into this space, are really thinking about it in that way. It's not just the contractions, it's what happens between the contractions, right?
I love that.
All of that movement is labor. All of that is valuable. All of that is productive, right? So I believe we're on track for that. And while we don't have this kind of formulaic sense of how that's going to transcend over those couple of days that we'll be together, the intent is there. And I think we can work hard to ensure that value is centralized and operationalized.
Yeah, because what we do have and what we will create is the emotion to walk along and support themselves.
Yes.
That's what we're going to bring to it, that we will connect the dots for them and help them understand the dots and how to keep walking on that through line so that they can receive the gifts of the whole beautiful conference.
It's going to be a heck of a journey. And I know that these things are never going to be perfect as you planned it. You know, it's going to be something that we as a collective get to sort of see unfold and be a participant in helping to it unfold as it's happening. We saw this happen in South Africa, where if you were to look at the program that I received from Sevonna about what we were going to be doing in South Africa, it was a complete, like, it's almost like a total change of like the main picture at the theater. It was like they just decided to completely change it, but that wasn't bad. It was actually everything that we really needed. It was just a matter of realizing that any real experience requires us to anticipate the unknowns and to be able to be willing to bob and weave together. And interestingly, because it was so unexpected and everybody was uncomfortable for different reasons, we all kind of just got close as a result. There was an intimacy there. Like intimacy, almost a prerequisite to intimacy is discomfort in some regards. But because you entrust your discomfort to an angel or a keeper.
It was like it was like open.
Wow.
And then it was creepy.
She's adorable. Oh my God.
Wow.
Let me just say what's so funny about this. I was going to say that you allowed the magic to happen. And that's, you know, we allowed the magic in birth to happen. We don't know what it's going to be. And she just dropped in with all this beautiful baby magic.
And peacefulness.
And it was creepy, and there was an elevator, and it was squares, and oh my gosh. Well, I mean, that is a perfect allegory. Parenting is a ceremony. You never know what you're going to get, and that is why it is so exciting and such a growth experience, and challenges us in all the right ways. So
you let it be, the magic happen.
Let it be. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, and clearly I have a little 4-year-old here that needs me, but do you guys have any final thoughts that you want to share? Maybe just tell people where they can find your work, because I think if everybody had a little Sevonna and a little bit of Haize in their lives, their practice, their life, perhaps they'd even just be a little bit more grounded. I think that you guys are bringing language and giving people permission to have a different experience in whatever way. So maybe you can just share with people what you're working on, where people can find you. And of course, I'll do the rest with regards to how they can come and meet us all in person at the conference.
Okay. I think what I would like to say to people who are contemplating joining us at the conference, or who are considering it or asking, well, why does this matter? Why am I coming? And I ask you to be brave. I ask you to be courageous and to take a leap of faith. We want to grow the art of birthing. We want to grow the craft and the art of birth keeping. And in order to do that, we have to be willing to be courageous and to have our hearts be, in that space and lead us forward. So I would just throw that out there for everyone. Where you can find me, you can find me at you're welcome, darling. You can find me at the Victoria Project on Instagram. You can find me at the Bridge Midwives on Instagram, and you will see our websites for both of those places and spaces. And of course, my own Instagram page and my website, haizehawk.com, or I am Haize Hawk.
Thank you, Haize. Sevonna.
Oh my goodness. One of the things I'm just mindful of and aware of is just like people might be asking questions about like what is ritual and ceremony, right? And just being mindful of the fact that we all enter at different places. And I just want to offer the definition that ceremony is where you meet yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you are willing to stretch in that direction, in the direction toward knowing and understanding and becoming more intimate with yourself, that's the invitation. So I hope that you'll join us for the ceremony in August in Louisville. And as you said it so beautifully, to be brave, really that call and charge to action feels really resonant with my heart right now. So I'll just echo that. And then if you are looking for me, you can find me at Restore Forward, at Black Women's Blueprint, at Sevonna on Instagram, and also at Sanctuary Medicine. So you can find me on any of those platforms. Learn more about Restore Forward at www.restoreny.org, or follow our Instagram. So really excited, Nathan. Thank you for the opportunity, and I can't wait to be with you in person.
Yeah, I thank you, ladies, both for giving me some of your time today and for continuing to be patient with my own learning process in crafting the language and the the presence to be entrusted by you individuals, but also the collective with some of these important responsibilities. And one thing I want to add to what you've said is that Penny, Dad is finishing up right now, okay? Was that our dear Machilo, who's going to be, again, a keynote speaker alongside Doña Lina and a variety of other speakers at the conference. She had said to me in our pre-recording call, she said, this idea of gaining skills, have we lost like a real holistic meaning for skills? Because everything we've talked about today is still a part of the skill set. It might not be a step-by-step maneuver to resolve a dystocia or to manage a postpartum hemorrhage, but those are clearly skills. And being able to sit and be present and to bring some ritual back into birth, having some spiritual notion as to what is happening here in birth and death is also a skill. It's just a skill that we haven't practiced. And so at an event like this, which is far more of a refuge for conscious birth workers than it is a conference, I'm inviting you to be brave as well. And for both of you to come is also like a reflection of how brave you are. Because you're carrying there's a lot of emotional energy that you guys are bringing into this space, and I really love you for entrusting me with your with this skill set that you guys have trained that so many other birth workers haven't. So thank you so much. And for those who want to come to the conference, bornfreetwinbreach.com is where you'll find all of the details, including some very lovely photos of the two women that are here today with me. Final thoughts, guys, and then we'll wrap it up.
Just see you there. I don't have anything to add. And Penelope, thanks for joining us.
Penelope, feel better, my darling.
Say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nathan. This was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. We will see you in August, and everybody listening, we'll hope to see you there as well. Thank you again.
See you soon.
Much love.